Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching World News. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Now, you guys might have noticed we are kicking things off a little bit earlier, and we are joined in the studio by our historian, Jan Deras, because we will be observing the 1 minute of silence known as the W hour in 5 p.m. Warsaw time. Jan, can you give us a little bit of context what we will be observing and what's the historical background of it?
Yes, 5 p.m., 1st of August 1944 is when the Warsaw Uprising was kicked off. And it was a very risky operation designed to seize control of the Germans as they were retreating and before the Soviets came in. So the Poles would fill the gap and greet the Soviets as the masters of in their own home. That was the idea.
So 5 p.m. and again, things will be kicking off in just a minute. Can you give us a little bit of background why this time in particular?
Well, this is the official start of the W hour, and it's always been commemorated since the 1990s when Poles could begin to relearn their history in 1944. So the whole city stops, not just Warsaw but other cities in Poland, and we observe a very poignant minute of silence for the fallen and for the sacrifices and the heroism that was shown.
Right, so soon we will be observing the footage from all across the country. We'll be seeing Warsaw, Krakow perhaps, and some of the festivals around the country and see how the minute of silence is being observed. So we might hear air raid sirens signaling the start of it and various footage from drone shots and all of that will be kicking off in just a couple of seconds.
Well, the air raid siren just drifts over the whole city and everyone stops, all the traffic stops, and we all fall silent for that minute.
W czasie okupacji był hotel, ale taki marniejszy, dla żołnierzy. We wtorek zaczęły się strzały.
Again, this is like a very poignant moment, like you mentioned earlier, and every year seeing this footage kind of gives me the chills, thinking about the historical background behind it. It's a lot of sacrifice being made at the time. And can you remind us once again, what is this fight all about?
It was to gain sovereignty in 1944, in this gap between the retreating Germans and the advancing Soviets. It was a very risky military operation. It relied on perfect timing throughout, and it was only designed to last for about a few days, so they could stand independently. It all went catastrophically wrong, and it lasted for 2 months, just over 2 months.
And of course, the fact that it went catastrophically wrong also stirred up some controversy kind of within the country as well. People have taking two sides of position on this, one of it being, well, finding this not to be necessary, and, well, symbolically, some people also feel like, well, you do have to fight for your freedom and sovereignty. Can you break down a little bit of that?
Well, you're right. Was it worth it is the big question, and both sides are polarised, and they both passionately argue their point. First of all, the proponents, the supporters say, well, we had to do it because we were having lived under 5 years of brutal occupation. We had to make this statement about Polish sovereignty. The detractors, the critics, say, well, the city was destroyed, its population was deported, 200,000 were killed, 20,000 insurgents were killed. Did it bring Polish independence any nearer? And so we have, broadly speaking, those two sides of the question. And they don't seem to get resolved at all.
Well, is this like kind of a 50-50 split between the sentiment, or do we see like a shift in the perception of this whole event throughout the years?
Well, according to the most recent opinion poll, about half the Poles are supportive of it. They thought the plan was justified to be carried out. A few years ago, 2018, you had about a third of poll respondents say that this was justified. So we can see a growing support for the uprising, and it seems to have cut across political boundaries and also generational boundaries, as you can see from our pictures there. Whether that will resolve the actual deep divisions in talking about the uprising itself, I'm not so sure.
Right, so we also have the statement made by the British historian Norman Davies, one of the leading experts in Polish history, who offered his insight on this event on TVP World on the 81st anniversary. So let's take a look.
The trouble is that the Poles seemed always to blame themselves, as though it was somehow Polish shortcomings which caused the tragedy. That's not true at all. The tragedy was caused by failings of coordination in the Grand Coalition, of which the Poles were part. The Home Army, the small underground army which started the fighting on the 1st of August, was part of the Grand Coalition, headed by the British, the Americans, and the Soviets, and a number of others, including Poland, but the Free French, the Dutch, the Norwegians, and so on, the rising was just supposed to be a short incident on the Warsaw sector of the Eastern Front. It was a very small part of military operations at the time.
And throughout the years, I've observed how this has become like a very strong cultural identity for Warsaw and for Poland as a whole as well. Thank you so much for being with us and giving us all this context. And for audiences, if you are interested in finding out more, visit tvpworld.com or tune into our show at 9:35, How We Got Here, with our very own Jan Ders. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben.
And with that, we conclude this edition of World News. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.